Our kids take a lot of pride in that we're not usually trying to run inbounds plays to get the ball in bounds. We're running inbounds plays to try to score. And so that's something that is a mentality. And so when you want that to be a part of your mentality, you do have to practice it. You do have to invest time.
Amy Williams, head coach of the Nebraska Cornhuskers women's basketball program, shared fantastic coaching tips in this episode of Game Time. We talked about how to improve the grit and resilience in your team, how to upgrade your baseline out of bounds plays, structuring practices, fostering leadership in your program. So many other great insights. Are you ready? Let's go. One of the things I like to start off with to kind of help the listeners understand your philosophy and where your thinking is what do you want your team at Nebraska to be known for?
Yeah, I think what I'd like our team at Nebraska to be known for is just the grittiest, toughest, kind of hardest working, just ability to handle hard well. That's something that we talk about just a lot within our program. And, last year we were talking to, a couple of coaches and players, late in the transfer portal. And, one of the players said, when I watch your team, it looks like a team that will not back down to anything. And I thought that that was one of the best compliments that I could receive from somebody who is kind of tuning in from the outside and watching our girls compete.
How does that show up in practice? Do you have different drills where you kind of coach effort, or does it show up in the game film? How does it show up for you guys?
Well, we really don't like to have to coach effort, and so that's something we really try very hard to recruit, the effort part and the players who want to give that effort. And then what we try to do is we try to challenge our kids in ways that are going to be above and beyond what they'll face in game situations every day in practice. And so that's, we sometimes will stack the cards against them. We'll try to make things harder with whatever obstacle that might be, certain drills starting, behind, or I'll make, really unfair, bad calls against them in the course of a drill to see how well they're going to respond. Something that we talk a lot about is just our response. When things go great, we really want to be a team that responds by celebrating each other's successes at the highest level possible. And our response when things are not going great, or we get a bad call, or something doesn't quite go our way, how are we responding to that? That, I think, is what develops that grit, that toughness, that resiliency, that ability to overcome the things we really want to be known for.
So usually that kind of toughness and grit is associated with defense. And I want to talk defensively with you as well. But first we'll jump into offense, because you guys last year, your team was in the top tier of offense in terms of point production, points per possession. Is there a philosophy that you have that helps achieve that efficiency?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's balance. Something that we really emphasize is having strong balance, and we've been fortunate to have a really dominant post player that attracts a lot of attention. But last year, the fact that we set a school record last year for made 3-point field goals, 252 made 3-point field goals. And a big part of that is the emphasis we place on paint touches. And we get, we have an outstanding scoring option inside that tends to attract a lot of attention, that leads to more open looks from behind the arc. But that's something that we really emphasize, is just having balance, being able to come at you with a lot of different ways any given night, not really knowing, who could be the leading scorer. And I think that's something that we really place a heavy emphasis on. We talk a lot about getting the best shot for our team on every possession. And so last year, being second in the Big Ten Conference in assists is something we take a lot of pride in. We just share the basketball, try to play the game the right way, and get everybody involved.
So you mentioned 3-point shooting. You were top 25 with over 8 a game. Do you have a practice drill that the players like or you like to use to help that shooting?
To be honest, I think a big part of it is every player on our roster feels confident to shoot the three. And, that's something that we instill in them and really work to hard to develop. We don't have, if you look at our stat sheets, we don't have anybody on our roster that's, 0 for 0 from the 3-point line or, just not. Every player on our roster is confident and has worked hard to develop the skill to be able to shoot it from behind the arc. So that's one thing. But I think we do quite a bit. A drill that I picked up when I was just sitting at a high school practice watching a recruit play one time, and where we work a lot on skip passes to shoot threes in a 3-minute time span, and you're crashing the glass. If you get 2 points for a tip, you get 1 point for a putback if the ball doesn't touch the floor, but it's pretty high paced and it's competitive. Sometimes we even do it against our scout team on both ends, as a competitive drill. And so I think that's something that our whole team tends to really get into.
It seems like a lot of your threes come from spot up opportunities. Is that just because you share the ball so well and everyone's ready to shoot?
Yeah, I think that our kids play that way. We try to really move quickly and play with pace and do whatever we can to try to get paint touches off post feeds and penetration. And then those usually lead to those kind of kick out spot up opportunities. And that's something we try to really practice a lot and take advantage of.
So another thing offensively, usually when coaches, sometimes youth and high school coaches will contact me and ask, how can we score more points, is basically their question in a nutshell. And I always say, focus on baseline out of bounds plays. You can get 5 or 10 extra points every game if you master a couple of plays. You were number 2 in the country last year in points per possession on baseline plays. One thing that I've noticed when I watch a lot of those baseline plays, there's a lot of movement. People are moving with purpose. The inbounders know all the options because there's a lot of pass faking to move the defenders. And you use the inbounder quite often as a scoring threat as well, either coming in to get the handoff or going the opposite direction off a double screen. How much practice time do you attribute to baseline plays, half court plays?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and what an observation. I didn't know we were number 2 in the country, but one thing I do know is that we have a whole section in our team notebook that has an inbounds philosophy, and we emphasize that. It's something that we talk about quite extensively, and it's something that our kids take a lot of pride in, that we're not usually trying to run inbounds plays to get the ball in bounds. We're running inbounds plays to try to score. And so that's something that is a mentality. And so when you want that to be a part of your mentality, you do have to practice it. You do have to invest time. And sometimes that's hard. And particularly if you're in a high school setting where you maybe don't have 20 hours a week of practice or whatever the case might be. But I do feel like it's worth it to spend a day just really talking to your team about trying to invest in a philosophy there, that we really want to try to run these plays to score and not just to get the ball in bounds. And in order for that to happen, little things need to be cleaned up. Pass faking is important, being deceptive, setting great screens, using your screens, playing with pace, having hard cuts. And, so we might invest a little more time than some teams with our inbounds execution. But it's something that I feel like, really is important to us, is to win those special teams.
In terms of practicing, how much time do you attribute to kind of the set plays versus defense versus transition play versus skill development?
That's such a great question. I think that every day it's just a little different. I mean, we came off of a practice yesterday where about half of our practice, we were just playing 3-minute games that gave us some opportunities to work on some inbounds plays and some certain situations. Those 3-minute games pull up like, oh, we're down by 2. Do we need to foul here? Do we need to play through the clock? And, so it was really heavy emphasis yesterday on situations situational stuff. But what we try to do, I would say a typical practice, we would structure it about a fourth of the practice is working on transition game, transition offense, transition defense. And we spend a lot of time working on score stops or score stop scores, where we're stringing together a couple of those possessions and having to work on some of that transition game. Then we probably spend about maybe a quarter of our practice working on some half court offense, about a quarter of it working on half court defense. And then the last quarter might be some special situational stuff. It could be an inbound scrimmage where we're guarding for a possession on a baseline inbounds play and then executing for a possession. It could be that, in that situation, we really need to spend the time working on press breakers. We know we're going to play a team that's going to press us. And so we spend a lot of, that quarter of that kind of special situations working on breaking down our press and press breaks, or it might be some zone offense, zone defense, things that, maybe typically aren't part of our regular everyday practice plan. So that's pretty much how we build our practices.
So last year you had 3 graduating seniors, quite a bit of production from them. WNBA draft pick Jazz Shelley, Maddie Kroll, and Darian White. That's a lot of big shoes to fill, basically. How do you communicate with the remaining players, the returning players, on especially the ones that you believe can step it up to another level, whether it be off-season communication or preseason and throughout the season?
Yeah, I think the best thing that I have going for me at Nebraska is we lost some really key pieces, and I have some returning key pieces, though, that understand that it's not going to be falling on one person's shoulders to try to replace players like Jazz Shelley, Darian White, and Maddie Kroll. I mean, what they brought to our team was special and unique. And now we have some new and kind of special and unique pieces coming in. And the best thing that I have going for me is just outstanding leadership from players like Alexis Markowski and Callan Hake and, Kendall Coley, Kendall Moriarty, players that have been in this program for a while, that understand that we're not trying to replace Jazz Shelley, or, Maddie Kroll was the anchor of our defensive transition and her communication skills. But we know that somebody is going to have to take on some new roles to be able to help us. And so, just the way that those upperclassmen have kind of embraced our new players and our transfer and our freshmen, and really started to instill confidence in them to put their special mark on this program and to bring, what they bring to the table and how can that fit into, what this team needs. And just that leadership, I've been really, really impressed with and pleased with, so far this summer and off season, and as we head into the beginning of this year.
Are those conversations that you had to have with them, or are they just the returning players, some of them just naturally good leaders and they knew what they had to do?
To be honest with you, it's something that we talk about all the time. And we have some kids who are naturally good leaders, but I believe that leadership has to be polished and developed and encouraged. And, it's just like if you have a strong athlete that comes into your program, it's not like you say, oh, well, we don't need her to go to the weight room. I feel like we have some naturally strong leaders, but we invest a lot of time in leadership development. And we're currently kind of studying 2 separate books with kind of the upperclassmen, like leadership council, the players on our team that we feel like are currently being depended on heavily for their leadership. And then we have kind of a developing and emerging leaders group that is studying another book that is kind of just teaching them about the initial first steps of being vulnerable and being brave enough to go after leadership. And so we're constantly working on developing better leadership, and we view it as a muscle that just needs to be flexed and stretched and trained, and just like everything else that we try to encourage.
That's great. That's it's always a huge adjustment when you're a freshman coming in. You used to be the best player on every team you played on, probably. And then there's kind of like, I don't want to say pecking order because that seems negative, but there is a hierarchy in terms of knowledge and systems and that kind of stuff. So it's great that you have good leadership to kind of pass on that knowledge and keep the system strong.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's definitely a learning curve, and the speed and everything, trying to adjust just to college and college basketball and everything at one time. It's really nice to have upperclassmen that are welcoming and just willing to put you under their wing and say, okay, and I love that we can advance in practice because on the baseline, my upperclassmen are pulling over, some of the underclassmen and giving the little coaching cues that maybe normally we would have to stop practice to do. And that allows us to be able to continue to be very efficient with our practice time and continue to advance and challenge our returners, as well as, having those underclassmen kind of making the tweaks and adjustments that they need to pick things up.
That's nice that it doesn't always have to come from you or the other coaching staff. It's probably stays a little longer when it comes from another player who's going through the same things.
100%.
Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit. We'll talk defense, specifically one defensive decision that you made in the Big Ten conference game against Maryland. End of the third quarter, starting probably first half of the fourth quarter, you went to what looked like maybe a diamond in one defense. Was that what
we did that in our Iowa game. The Iowa game at home, we went to a little bit of diamond in one defense there against Caitlin Clark, and that was something that was fairly unique to our game plan, for that particular game. Not something that's a huge part or staple of our defense. Like we've pulled that out just a few times on a few occasions. I think we did against Maryland in previous seasons, and then last year we did again in that game with Iowa at home on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, I think I saw it in the Maryland game. Maybe you're doing it on Brene Alexander for a few possessions. And I was wondering, I had a few different questions. I mean, when you started it was the last possession of the third quarter and then a few to start the fourth. It was a 1-point game. And by the end, it was 10 or 11 and you ended up winning by 10. First of all, what goes through the coaching staff's minds and thoughts in terms of why change it up so much? Because you didn't play a lot of zone, especially the kind of junk type stuff.
Yeah.
And secondly, why on Brene Alexander? Because she was usually, I think she was 9 points, 1 rebound a game. So it wasn't their leading scorer or playmaker. I'm wondering why. I guess it worked. And I would say that it's the reason that you pulled away and won. So I'm just curious how that thought process went.
Yeah, to be honest with you, like I think that there are certain situations, certain things that a team like Maryland presents some unique challenges with their matchups and some of the things that they bring to the table. And a player like Brene Alexander, who is so incredibly dangerous from behind the arc and is so capable of, going on bam, 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 hitting multiple 3-point shots in a row. But if you can find ways to mix things up a little bit and still keep those dangerous players like kind of at bay from being able to go on and string together kind of multiple possessions in a row. So, I think in that situation, The decision making, comes from lots and lots of film watching by our coaching staff, and then some decision making about our own personnel and what we have capabilities of taking away. And there might be some times where we feel like, okay, we'd really like to be able to take this particular aspect of this team away, but we don't have the personnel that we really want to be able to effectively do that. So we work with and make those decisions based on what we feel like puts us in the best position to utilize our personnel and still stay in position for rebounding. And rebounding was a huge emphasis for us when I first came into the league. We were near the bottom in every rebounding statistical category. And that was something that we really set out to emphasize and try to change. And so this last year being, top 5 in the country in defensive rebounds or whatever it was due to having a really good rebounder by like Alexis Markowski. But I think the other thing is, like, we have players that in practice want to challenge her to be the leading rebounder, and they're kind of jawing at each other and, trying to figure out who's going to win that board man gets paid, kind of rebounding award. And so it's something that we emphasize pretty heavily, but a lot of the decision making we're making defensively is how are we going to best put our team in position to be able to take away what we want to take away from the opponent, and then also still be in a position for rebounding. And I think with a team like Maryland, who's been so dominant on the boards over the years, some of that diamond and one decision making is, putting us in position where we still have rebounders in place to be able to pursue the boards.
That thought process and that thinking and kind of having an open mind to change things up either game to game or year to year requires a lot of adaptability on your part, your coaching staff, your players. Is there a characteristic that you feel great coaches need to have?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I feel like the best characteristic that great coaches have is the ability to communicate. And I think that ability to communicate is something that if you ask my husband, he's almost always going to say short version, please, because he thinks that I communicate maybe a little too much sometimes. But to be honest with you, like I consider myself a pretty good communicator. But if you ask me, what do I need to keep getting better at? I'm going to say communication. And it's just something that you can't ever really master. But the best coaches, I feel like, are outstanding with that. And you mentioned adaptability and being able to adapt and to make those changes defensively. But, there's times where I have to be able to communicate to my team that we need to work on this defense. And we've been working on it and working on it and working on it for maybe a month, and we haven't pulled it out in a game yet. And they're like, what are we doing? We keep working on this defense. We keep working on this defense and we're holding it in our back pocket and we haven't, pulled it out one time. And so it takes great communication to continue to get the buy-in that you need from your staff and from your players to be able to continue to see the value in why we're working on what we're working on and when we might need to utilize that to help us be successful.
Is there anything that any advice that you would give to youth or high school coaches? You had mentioned that you had taken a shooting drill while you were on a recruiting trip from a high school coach. So I'm sure you see lots of high school games. Is there any kind of advice that you think would help them the most in terms of whether it's communicating with their players or getting the most out of their players?
That's another really good question. I think my best advice is I'm just a learner by nature, and I would just encourage and advise every coach that's in this game to continue to want to keep growing and learning and adapting and we do the Clifton Strength Finders within our program. And my number one strength out of the 34 innate characteristics is learner. And I think that's just such a really, it's just served me really well is, I go into every practice that I go to watch, every high school game I go to watch. And I almost always come away with taking some notes of something that I want to try to see if we can implement or find ways. So I think, that hunger to just, continue to learn and grow for your team and your players and your program is just a really valuable asset that that I would encourage all coaches to continue to hold on to.
I love that. Lifelong learner. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
It
sure.
also requires an open mind as well. You have to be willing to learn.
Absolutely, 100%. Or my girls still tease me, all the girls, because I'm like, if I could sit in class all day and go get a PhD and do, if I had the time for that, I would most definitely do it. I love to learn. They're like, you're crazy, coach, but I think that there is like my least favorite phrase in all of the world is, well, this is how we've always done it, and I just feel like, if we can stay hungry for, is there a better way? Can we keep growing? Can we, adjust or tweak or make things better, raise the bar? There's always small ways to keep doing that. So.
That's great. I'll get you out of here on this. I call this the fast break portion. So it's just 4 or 5 quick questions, 1 word, 1 sentence answer. No need to elaborate if you don't need to or you don't want to. First, okay. Team A is number 1 offensively in the country, struggles to stop the ball. Team B is the exact opposite. Number 1 defensively, can't score. Who would you rather coach?
Team A. I'm going with Team A. So I feel like putting some points up on the board is pretty fun, and I like to guard too. And we're very proud of the last year that we were number 2 in scoring defense in the Big Ten Conference. But I'm going Team A all day, every day.
Yeah, me too. What's the one you had mentioned what you want to improve at coaching wise, but what's another item besides communication that you would like to or you want to get better at?
I think that's such a good question. I think for me, just continuing to really lean in heavily to the analytics side of things. I'm by nature, I'm biology and math double major. My mind thinks numbers. And so I'm really, really just intrigued by the analytics side of things. And so just being able to continue to lean into some of the analytics that I think will really make a difference within our program is something that I want to continue to grow as a coach.
What was your first coaching role, whether paid or unpaid?
My first coaching role, I was a graduate assistant at University of Nebraska Kearney Division II school, right when I got done playing here at Nebraska. And the best thing that I ever did for myself, I went to Kearney, which was a top 20 Division II program at the time. I worked for an outstanding, amazing head coach who allowed me to have my hands involved in everything. So I learned how to recruit. I learned how to do home visits. I learned how to do pretty much everything that you could be involved in, and to do it with a team that was really doing it at a very high level. And so it's best decision I ever made, and still some of my favorite coaching days.
That's great. It's like an apprenticeship you had there.
Yeah.
Last question for you. If I'm coming to Lincoln, Nebraska, coming to watch a Nebraska women's game, obviously, what's one restaurant and one site that I should see as well?
Ooh. One restaurant is very, very hard for me to kind of narrow down because I'm not a very good cook. So I tend to eat out quite a bit, and just really lots of favorites in Lincoln. I think my kind of go-to down in the Haymarket, just because of all the atmosphere and vibe down in, that part of Lincoln, is Laszlo's. And that's a place that was there before the big kind of development and boom that I used to have my parents take me when they would come to Lincoln when I was a student athlete here myself, and still one of my all-time faves. So that might be one of my first suggestions. And then spots to visit. Golly, there's just so many faves, but I think this time of year, probably one of the local pumpkin patches, just the fall, corn mazes, just the fun that goes along with the weather in Nebraska and this changing, and it's a beautiful time, and just a really fun thing to go do in our city, and outside of football weekends, Memorial Stadium, some of those places, Pinnacle Bank Arena, when we start playing games, those are the best sites in Lincoln, Nebraska, in my opinion.
That's fantastic. I'm ready for it in my orange. I'm ready for the pumpkin patch.
Yeah, perfect. You're ready.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate you helping out other coaches and sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your experiences. And I'm looking forward to cheering on Nebraska throughout the year this year.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate, this was a fun conversation, and I'm happy to be involved. So thanks for what you're doing. Flesh.